But, so then you get the whole gender ideology in schools with, and especially in California, New Jersey, and elsewhere, policies were implemented allowing schools to socially transition children without notifying the parents. Parents discovered their kids were being called by new identities at school while the family was kept in the dark. Then you get drag queen story hour and performances, where libraries and even some school events hosted drag performers as family-friendly events. This is how out of touch as a party these people are. And then they deny biology in their curriculum. Multiple school boards and textbooks began including claims like men can get pregnant and stupid shit like that, and pushing gender identity as fluid fact rather than contested ideology. Parents who raised objections at board meetings were sometimes labeled bigoted or even treated as potential domestic terrorists. So parents felt sidelined and betrayed, believing the state was inserting itself between them and their children's upbringing, rewriting biology and pushing ideology over education, and rightly so. And then not only that, but then you have the pushing of critical race theory. Lessons rooted in critical race theory encourage separating students by race into privileged and oppressed. In some schools, white children were asked to apologize for their whiteness, while students of color were told they were systematically disadvantaged, regardless of their individual circumstances. Math and English programs were altered to reduce emphasis on right answers and merit-based grading, with some educators labeling punctuality, grammar, and objectivity as white supremacy culture. So families felt betrayed by dishonesty and worried their kids were being taught to judge others by skin color because these Democrat racists were trying to force everybody to do that, rather than by character. And then you get the movies and you get the woke media, corporate stuff where Star Wars and Marvel, they're doing all this stupid shit where they have to put in girl boss themes and subvert classical heroes in order to deliver political lectures and ideological preaching rather than compelling storylines. Even kids' content got repurposed, like Scooby-Doo even. Velma was they turned Velma into a progressive lecture series full of race, gender, and sexuality commentary. Audiences just wanted adventure, comedy, or nostalgia. And not to walk away and feel like they've been scolded. And the box office reflected it because they lost a ton of money, like the dipshits that they are. So they turned storytelling into activism, and people stopped showing up. So not only that, but you had the more of the elite hypocrisy and looking down their nose on people. Things like Hillary Clinton referring to Trump supporters as deplorables. Just highlighting how little they think of people who are not in elitist circles. She called them a basket of deplorables, racists, sexists, homophobes. It became a political dynamite, fueling resentment in the working class communities who felt dismissed and insulted by somebody who was asking for their vote. This is how out of touch these morons are. Pundits often deride the middle of the country as flyover country, implying rural and middle-class America was backward, bigoted, or irrelevant. For families in Ohio, Nebraska, or West Virginia, it felt like people running the country were laughing at them on late-night TV. Voters concluded that the political and media class not only ignored their struggles, jobs, inflation, opioids, education, but actively looked down on them. They didn't get that impression from Trump. Not only that, you got the hypocrisy, like John Kerry in his private jet. He was Biden's climate envoy. And was repeatedly spotted arriving at global climate summits on a private jet, emitting more carbon in one trip than most families do in an entire year. And then he lied about it.
I just don't agree with
this.
You know, to just be grossly generalistic,
not that dope. This dope.
I just don't agree with your facts, which began with the presentation of one of the most outrageously persistent lies that I hear, which is this private jet. We don't own a private jet. I don't own a private jet. I personally have never owned a private jet.
That's a lie.
A few moments later.
You just testified under oath that you never owned a private jet. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to enter into the record article here from February 15th of 2023. The John Kerry family private jet was sold shortly after accusations of climate hypocrisy.
That's just too good. He's lying bastard. You know, just that kind of stuff. People are sick of it. It's so dishonest. Regular people see this crap as rules for thee, not for me. Elites, even those pushing climate alarm, were living in luxury while demanding sacrifice from working families already struggling to afford groceries and gas. So, you know, how's the Democrat Party going to deal with this kind of stuff? And then not only that, but then you talk about the immigration and the huge surge of people, and how in favor of that the Democratic Party still is. And now how they're being nutcases trying to stop us from getting criminals out of the country, you know, putting everybody's loved ones in danger potentially. Probably not, but people don't even like the potential of their safety being threatened. So when Trump left, there's about 74,000 monthly crossings. And then during Biden, it peaked at 300,000. Millions and millions of people that we don't know. And then not only that, but then there's just other things like cost of living things. Like Biden, on his very first day in office, President Biden revoked the permit for the Keystone XL pipeline, a project expected to deliver 800,000 barrels of Canadian crude oil per day. Thousands of union jobs vanished overnight, and energy independence took a hit. By 2022, average U.S. gas prices spiked to over $5 a gallon nationwide. For ordinary families, it felt like Washington declared war on affordable energy. And then there was the inflation gaslighting. As soon as prices rose in 2021, the White House and Federal Reserve repeatedly assured the public that inflation was transitory. Instead, inflation persisted for over 2 years, peaking at 9.1% in June of 2022, the highest in 40 years. Grocery bills doubled, every staple went up. Families saw weekly grocery bills jump by 30 to 40%, while hearing politicians insist the economy was strong. Biden declared the economy was the strongest in the world in 2023, while polls showed the majority of Americans felt they were worse off financially than before he took office. People weren't just squeezed, they were gaslit. That's the Democrats' favorite pastime, is gaslighting people. They were told to ignore what they saw with their own eyes. Then there's the homelessness that people had to endure. Cities like San Francisco, Portland, Los Angeles, and Seattle, sidewalks turned into open-air drug camps. Tent cities stretched for blocks, and open drug use became normalized. Progressive mayors insisted their policies were compassionate, refusing to crack down on vagrancy or crime. But the result was chaos. Compassion that looked and smelled like decay. San Francisco even handed out free drug paraphernalia in the name of harm reduction. The rhetoric of compassion collided with the reality of piss, feces, and needles on city sidewalks. If that's how Democrats are running your city, do you think that you're going to want to stay a Democrat? Then there was election rule chaos. COVID became the excuse for rapid changes, expanding mail-in ballots, drop boxes, ballot harvesting, reduced signature verifications. And they claim it was all necessary. But this made Americans lose a lot of faith in the fairness of elections. There's a war on gender roles and toxic masculinity. Schools, media, and HR departments pushed the idea that traditional masculinity was harmful. Ads and TV mocked dads as useless buffoons. Universities ran workshops on toxic masculinity. Men and boys felt attacked simply for being male. Fathers were dismissed, and young men were left without positive role models. Instead of lifting men up, the woke culture tried to break them down. And then there's the diversity over competence with the DEI nonsense. Corporations and government agencies bragged about firsts and how this was the first, this, that, and the other thing. And ordinary Americans worried about safety and excellence were dismissed and told they were bigots. They expanded the education indoctrination. Instead of learning core skills, students were told normal academic discipline was a form of bias, and parents felt schools cared more about ideology than education. Democrats declared democracy is on the ballot when Republicans ran. Biden labeled opponents as threats to democracy. When Democrats won, they declared democracy strong. When they lost or were challenged, they cried that democracy was dying. The word democracy became a weapon, a euphemism for one-party rule. And then there was the sports stuff with the kneeling and the national anthem. Sports stopped being a refuge. They became another battlefield. As all of these things combine, and many more things, and I don't hear any of these Democratic pundits addressing any of these kinds of issues. One here and there, but this is the comprehensive reason why people are getting the hell out of the Democratic Party. They don't want anything to do with what they've got going on there, because everything they do is at some extreme weird position. Whether it's supporting crime or gaslighting people about facts of the economy or Trump being Hitler and all this kind of stuff. People are tired of it, sick of it, and it's done. And woke is dead. All right, guys, that's all I've got. Be sure to join me. I'll be back on Monday. So, see ya.